I'm going to talk to you today about one of the most difficult readings I've ever done in my life. And that happened, and also Jane, one of her most difficult readings, because we did this together. And that is, we were asked in around about 2003 to asked by a television company from America if we could get in contact with Princess Diana. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a minute and what happened, but I'll tell you first a little bit about how it all happened, why they asked us, because we didn't approach them. This came out of the blue, and I kind of before had been asked the reason they found me was because I'd before written something in the Daily Mirror about and they had some predictions, and one of my predictions, you've read my predictions and seen them on the YouTube, but one of my predictions was that Prince Charles would die in a car accident, or be involved in I didn't say die, I think I said very dangerous, serious car accident. Prince Charles would be involved that would affect everything that would ever happen from that point on with the monarchy. And that was wrong, of course, but Princess Diana died weeks later after I made that prediction, so that kind of flagged me for one reason, because obviously it's not right, it's a wrong prediction, but it's on the right theme. I'd obviously not seen it completely. This happens with predictions, as you know, I've explained before. And also I'd been also talking to somebody in Knightsbridge who'd called me in for a reading. I was going up to Knightsbridge at that time, doing a lot of private readings, and I used to go up to London and do readings. And I'd been doing a number of readings for people that were fairly high up in society, but I didn't know who this woman was. As it turned out, she'd been Diana's colonic irrigation person, right? I won't describe colonic irrigation in detail, but basically Diana at the time was suffering from bulimia and all sorts of things, and would have colonic irrigation a lot in Knightsbridge. I had no idea that this woman had any connection whatsoever with Diana, and I described to her this young woman that I said was had given her something, and I said, she'd given you something that this woman had given you something that belonged to the Romanovs, because I could see this Romanov pillbox that I described to her. And I said, oh, this woman, she knew Elton John. She was very close friends with Elton John. I didn't know it was Diana. I didn't even describe her as Diana, but I was describing this young woman. She knew Elton John. That seemed a bit odd because, there was the connection with Diana, of course, a lot with Elton John. And I gave all these details about her and her friendship with the lady. I said she was paranoid, that was not completely paranoid, but she was frightened about people following her all the time when she came there. And I described her personality, and I described things that had happened between them that gave her proof that this was the person she knew. But I couldn't get the name, I said. I couldn't get the name. Well, when it had all finished and was over, she said, do you know who you were communicating with? I said, no, I didn't get the name of who it was. Obviously someone that was quite important, and obviously she'd given you this pillbox thing. What was that? Well, she went into the other room and brought in a picture of the pillbox that had been a Romanov pillbox that the woman in spirit had given her, and then said, do you know who you were talking to? You were talking to one of my clients, which was Princess Diana. My God, now I see why Elton John's so important, because they were close friends. So that kind of blew me away. And somehow this information got out there. I can't remember. I think I'd written something. I might have written something on my website about it, or the woman had written something on her website. But what happened is that basically they found out that I'd made this communication with Diana, and they read more about Jane and myself and said, oh, would you and Jane like to communicate with Diana on television? This American company did. And there was an Australian guy actually that was doing he was Paul Sherratt. He was a very well known person in Australia. He died now, unfortunately. Lovely man, but he had all sorts of accolades, and he had a park named after him in Melbourne, I think it was, or Sydney. But he was a very well known person in Australia. He'd been a comedian. He knew Morecambe and Wise and people like that, and. Now, he was organising it and asked us if we could do this séance with Diana, to contact with Diana. Well, of course, I went and had a meeting with them initially, just myself, and I said, you can't just conjure up somebody from spirit. You can't just sort of say, you can't tell me, oh, get in contact with Elvis Presley, because it don't work like that. I said, when this happened, this reading I'd given this woman happened, it happened because I had inadvertently connected with someone that she cared about and knew, and there was lots of personal information that I could give, like that Romanoff thing, and I explained it to them what had happened in that séance, or reading, we called it really, but they were talking about it as a séance. And, you know, so I said, if we do anything like this, we must have with us people that really knew Diana personally, really knew her, so that we could give proper information. You know, you can't do like Derek Acora did, where he held the hat of Michael Jackson and gave all sorts of information to a load of fans that were there. I mean, nonsense. You have to give a true communication. You have to give a person-to-person communication, a true spirit link, and that has to be verified. So I said, unless you can get people, and you know, I don't know who you could get who Diana was genuinely close to. You know, obviously, if you could, you would. Obviously, we'd have to do it with someone in royalty, but I mean, I can't see how that ever happened. Anyway, they said, well, look, we'd like to do this. You know, what's your fee? How much are you going to take for this? And I said, look, Jane and I've spoken to Jane already, and Jane and I, we can't charge to do something like that, you know, because, you know, our work is to prove life after death. And I said, look, if you're going to give a fee, I want that fee to be given to one of Princess Diana's charities. And we'll do it on the basis that we will do it purely as a proof of spirit, as something that we can hopefully give a message to the world that Diana is alive in the spirit, as it were, that she survived death, as we would say as spiritualists, that her personality survived. And I said, you know, and we don't want to take money for it anyway, as because, you know, if it's not, we might not get it through, you know, so I don't want you coming back to me saying, oh, you know, you can't get it, because I said, we don't know until the actual minute we sit down if a genuine spirit communication can come through. And if it's not going to come through, you'll have to say at the end of the program, Craig and Jane didn't get it, and we'll take that as accepted, that, you know, we look fools. But who cares? I'd rather give the truth. So I know. So we agreed to it on the basis that as long as they give a proper fee to one of the Diana charities, and obviously cover our expenses, that would be things like our travel costs, food costs, and basically look after us, food and drink and everything. Well, not drink, but, you know, look after us while we're on these adventures, as it were, because it was a bit of an adventure, because they wanted to take us to Paris, and then we would go around the sites in Paris and kind of pick up on the residual energy. Well, that's not that easy, you know, but anyway, I can talk about that in a moment. And then afterwards there would be a live séance. It was kind of filmed as live, to be honest, but part of it was live, between a séance happening in Paris, who we didn't know who was going to be doing that one, and us in London in Stationers' Hall, which was in the shadow of St Paul's, which was a good setting. I mean, we walked into this quite naively, really, Jane and I. We thought by not charging a fee, we'd probably be, you know, people would understand that we were doing it genuinely. But of course, we had no idea we were a bit naive. We didn't really understand, I think, the scale of what we were doing. I mean, I thought it was just going to be some small show, but they'd actually put a big budget behind this programme. We had all the cameras on tracks and all the cameras that go up high on the cranes and things like that, you know, at the show. So, God, very stressful séance to do, you know, with such an agenda to perhaps give a message from one of the most famous people in the world to a group of people. I mean, could you imagine trying to do that? Those of you that are psychics and mediums out there, can you imagine the pressure that's upon you when you do that? I really pulled. Jane said, what are you pulling me into this time? You know, what are you doing? I said, well, I think it would be a good experience, and you know, and I said we're going to do it for the love of it, and I hopefully it will help reassure people, you know, and hopefully even the boys might one day see it and feel that, you know, two mediums have communicated with their mum, and might get some comfort from it. So we did. It's going to be, you know, the reason I'm doing this is partly because, you know, it's going to be shown again soon. It's going to be shown again. I think it's probably going to be a download on Vimeo. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know. I'm not. Again, we've got zero involvement money-wise in any of these things. But I did hear that it's going to be shown on Vimeo, and they've asked me to to talk about it later on. So it's talking at the moment, so look out for it. But anyway, so I thought, well, good one to talk about on my blog here. And yeah, so we went to Paris. We went round all the places in Paris where Diana had stayed. We went in the Ritz. What's his name? Alma Fayed did an interview. We didn't interview with him, but he allowed us to go into Dodi's flat and go around and see what we could pick up in Dodi's flat. We didn't like some of it. You know, they were making us go through the tunnel and the Alma Tunnel and see what do you pick up now. And I said, well, I guess, you know, we had to drive through 6 times before me and Jane actually said anything. And frankly, at the end, I didn't like that bit because I thought that was too close to the actual death spot, you know, and that was the TV people pressing us a bit there, to be honest, you know. But we said, you know, we felt what we thought was happened at the very end. But I didn't like that bit. I think that was not in good taste. So I regret that bit. But the rest of it, I think, was pretty good. We got some good evidence, but of course none of that evidence when you're walking around these places can be confirmed because we're picking up on what happened. So it kind of builds the story up, and you know, you can't get a lot of verification for the things that are said by standing at the site, you know, and the medium picks up, you know, that's just the energy of the place. So anyway, it's the prelude to the main important part, which was the seances themselves. Now, you'll be able to watch those from a download, so I better not be too much of a spoiler about what happened on them. But we did pretty good, I think. We couldn't be shown on British television. I could only show the clips of bits and pieces of it, and another medium who was very jealous of Jane and I acted as a commentary and said, oh, it's a load of rubbish, nothing in it, you know. And he was horrible about us. I won't name him, but he was dreadful. And but nonetheless, the actual thing was shown in America, and it's going to be shown in full now internationally again, apparently. But the seances themselves were very enlightening in that Jane and I, you know, we communicated with Diana. We believe we got Diana through. It was really interesting because all sorts of weird coincidences were happening on the way to the place. For example, when we were in Paris, it just happened that the taxi driver who was driving one of the limousines, somehow in his family he'd had connection with Wallace Simpson. He was an old man and said that he'd driven Wallace Simpson, which struck me as odd because that's quite a long time ago. But you know, that's interesting coincidences were happening. You know, it's like the whole energy was building up towards this seance. And what happened? I get flu. You know, I got full of flu before I go in. I've got a hacking cough all the way through this seance, you know. So they had to keep stopping. Look, he's coughing. Can you do it again? The sign man, sort of, his ears are just blowing off again, you know. Oh, the stress of it. You can imagine trying to do that. So I think Jane and I did exceptionally well to be able to actually get what we did. And with complete strangers who we didn't know anything about. We were just brought into the room, and here we are on this big set, you know, with crane cameras, like I said, and sound men and a massive camera crew. You know, we had no idea it was going to be on this scale. And we'd been sat meditating beforehand, so we had, and Jane went and did her readings first to a group of people, and you can watch that if you go and have a look at it. And then I gave my readings afterwards on another table with another group of people. And the proofs we gave, hopefully, gave enough proof that Diana had survived death. Our objective, I mean, the program, I think, wanted to, you know, draw a line under the conspiracy theories and things, and was kind of looking for controversial stuff. But as I'd said to them, Jane and I's role in this would be purely to give proof that Diana survived death. We didn't want to get tied into all the conspiracy theories and things like that and create more pain and hardship. We felt that what we wanted to do was really to just prove, just to do like we do if we were given a reading, a communication with anybody who'd lost a loved one, and just give proof and evidence that that person was alive and well in the spirit, you know. And you do that by giving little details. I mean, I think the most powerful thing that I gave which, you know, a skeptic will say, oh, what a lot of nonsense, how can that be proof of spirit? But the most important one I think I was able to give to one of the ladies there was that you used to buy pear drops and keep them in your pocket, that you would specifically give those pear drops to Diana, and she would say to you, oh, it's naughty, I shouldn't have pear drops, but I'd have one anyway, you know, if you got me a pear drop. Now that was, I think, you know, one of those tiny little bits of evidence that I hope clinch things. But, you know, it was all done fast, and we got what we could, and we gave pretty good evidence, I think, and proof. And the people afterwards said that they were wowed by it and said that they believed that that really was Diana there. But I didn't go into, and Jane didn't, we kind of didn't want to, we didn't go into all this business about, you know, did MI5 try to kill her and things like that, you know. Because that was our role. Our role, we were doing it for nothing. We weren't going to be told that, you know, you must do this and do that. I said, no, we're going to do this. We're going to do this properly, and we're going to give evidence of survival of the personality after death, because that's what we as spiritualists do. We don't want to just come up with speculation just so you can get some headlines. So that's why a lot of people said, oh, God, you know, they're a bit disappointed because we hadn't gone into that in a great deal of detail. In fact, what we had was the feeling from Diana, and this was the feeling that, you know, that 90% of all these things were just made up stories by people, you know, that it was an unfortunate accident, that there was no conspiracy to kill her, that it just was the case that, you know, I mean, why it happened, there's so much speculation, you know, was the car damaged, I hear later, was the driver not maybe inebriated, and, you know, why did they take a route that they shouldn't have taken, you know, a different route to normal. I mean, tons of speculation, as you know, about the drive through the Alma Tunnel where she died, but it was, I'm afraid to say, just an unfortunate, terrible accident. And you know, one of the things that comes with bereavement is denial. I mean, the whole nation grieved when Diana died. You know, I remember the shock of it all. And it's like we get the shock, you know, a young person, someone that was, you know, kind of the person that we all were looking to as someone who was bringing compassion into the world of, you know, the higher echelons of politics and everything. You know, she was raising wonderful issues to make us think about, you know, AIDS, and make us think about minefields and all the children of the world and so on, you know. So she was a hero to us all, wasn't she? And then she's killed like that. So after the shock, we get denial. No, it can't have happened. It can't happen. It can't happen to our hero. But sadly, that is the way death strikes. It just strikes us down when we least expect it. So do I believe there were conspiracies behind all this? I personally think that it was just a fatal, dreadful accident, and that's harder to accept than other stories. Do I believe that there were all sorts of other things going on in the background with Diana? Well, like that first reading that I gave that I talked about, you know, with the colonic lady, it was not done on camera or anything like that. And when I was picking up with her reading, which actually was an easier reading to do and much more detailed in many respects, because it wasn't under any pressure, I didn't even know who I was communicating with, my feeling was that there was around Diana a tremendous sense of paranoia, because I said, you know, I feel this woman's being followed all the time, you know. And the lady told me afterwards, the MI5 were tracking her even when they came to her, when she was having her colonic irrigation. You know, they were miking her place. They found, you know, they were following her and keeping tabs on her the whole time, because she was a real threat to the establishment. Not only the establishment of the monarchy, but she was an actual threat to the whole constitution of the UK, really, you know. And she was going out with a Muslim, you know, in Dodi, you know. So, yeah, she amazing woman. So yes, I'm absolutely sure that the establishment were terrified of her. The MI5 were doing lots of clandestine stuff to keep tracks of her. Whether it went to the point where they would actually kill her, which is one of the big theories about all this, I don't really know about that. I don't think maybe they plotted these things, you know. I mean, that's for other people to speculate about. But the connection that I felt, and Jane also felt from Spirit, was that she really was putting her spiritual values first. You know, the thoughts that came through were the thoughts of Mother Teresa, who had passed not long before Diana, and I feel her connection with her was much stronger than the material connection she had here. She was part of her spirit in a way. I think they were twin souls in some respects. So do I think that there was a conspiracy? No. I think ultimately her death itself was just a dreadful accident, and there were many things going on. I'm sure she was being watched from every direction, and there was probably more people following the car than just the paparazzi, but the death itself was a tragic accident in my opinion. So anyway, it's going to be reshown. I hope we don't get a lot of negative press again. Jane and I were vilified in the press when this came out initially. Everybody said we were doing it for money and the rest of it, and they never pointed out the fact that we didn't take a penny for it, and that we were doing purely to prove that life continues after death. So let's hope they see it in a positive light, as like the Daily Mail did at the time. But you know, the Sun and the rest of them went for us, and I'm sure if it gets a wide viewing audience again, we'll probably get vilified again. But we did it with good intent, and I'd like to think that we did our bit to try to prove that Diana's okay, you know. And maybe if the boys even have watched this video, possibly they've watched stuff about their mum online, no, she's well. She what we understood, that, you know, when a person goes to spirit, all the pain goes. She would have obviously her spirit would obviously come back round her, boys, and been around her to this day. But in herself, she's well. She's a highly developed spiritual woman that would have overcome the shock of death quickly when she went to spirit. She believed in the afterlife. She used to consult a lot of psychics. I know she used to phone the very people on our phone lines, I believe, because some of them that claimed they spoke to Diana came through the phone lines that we used to use. But she used to phone everybody and every psychic. She was a wild card, you know. And but she was obviously interested in the afterlife, and she'd obviously thought deeply about the spirit, deeply unhappy in her life and her marriage with Charles. But actually in the readings again, she actually said she loved Charles, even then, even after it all, even though, you know, Charles had obviously loved Camilla as well. But you know, it's a complicated story, isn't it? And isn't the messages of the heart, the things of the heart, a complicated thing? But underneath it all, she was a deeply spiritual woman. So she would have survived death, as we all do, but she would have survived death and woken in the spirit very quickly, knowing that her life was much more than just the material world. Okay, there you go. I hope you enjoyed that. Jane and I now do our spiritual work for our foundation. All the profits that come from things like our conferences and theatres and workshops and all those exciting things now go into this foundation, which ultimately has the long-term plan of building centres in the UK and maybe around the world one day. But meanwhile, we've been doing a lot of direct spiritual work with it. We've been going out, feeding people in India, giving to the destitute, giving to beggars. We've helped feed schools, helped orphanages, and we've even given cows to older people that have no other form of income. So mediumship can change your life, but it can also help people directly in the world. So go to the links at the end and find out all about what Jane and I are trying to do. And you can do a lot just by sharing these videos on social media. Help us get the word out. Help us to do something really good in this world. Click on this picture of me to subscribe to our channel and see all of our latest videos as soon as they're published. Or click on this next video for more of our stuff.